The week I thought I'd be bunking with my cousin was supposed to be a non-event family. Same blood. Same last name. What could possibly go wrong? Mom dropped the news over a crackling phone line while I was still on the bus. Wedged between a guy's gym bag and a woman's grocery sacks. Zane's coming for a few days, she said. Like she was telling me the milk was on sale. His campus is shut for plumbing disasters, and your Kala's off to Dubai. Easier if he crashes with us. I opened my mouth to protest, but the call cut. By the time I dragged myself through the front door that Friday, sticky with Lahore's November heat, Zane's scuffed Nike size 11, always immaculate, were lined up beside the shoe rack, like they'd paid rent. I hadn't seen him in 3 years. Not since that rooftop barbecue at Nana's, where he'd spent the evening charming every auntie within a 10-meter radius while I hid behind the water tank, pretending to take aesthetic photos of the moon. We weren't the cousins who swapped childhood secrets or built forts. He was 23 to my 21, captain of whatever team he touched, the guy people instinctively leaned toward. I was the quiet one who kept earbuds in and sketchbooks out, so when I pushed open the door and found him sprawled across our sagging charcoal sofa feet on the armrest, phone balanced on his chest, that crooked grin already waiting, I felt the house tilt. Assalamu alaikum. Rumi, he said, not moving. Miss me, Hassan. I snorted. Didn't know I was supposed to. He laughed, the sound ricocheting off the yellowed walls. Lighten up. 1 week. We'll survive.
Survive.
Famous last words. I liked my corners. My playlists on low volume. My desk lamp angled just so. My 11 p.m. chai ritual with zero conversation. Zane brought chaos in a duffel bag. Protein shaker clatter at dawn. Speaker thumped Bhangra at midnight. FaceTime laughter that leaked under doors. The first night he took the guest room across the hall, but even through plaster, I could hear him gaming trash talk, off-key humming. The occasional thud of a water bottle hitting the floor. Still, something about him had shifted. The boy I remembered was loud but boyish. This Zane moved like a man who'd measured every inch of space and decided it was his. Shoulders broader, jaw sharper. The kind of effortless posture that made cheap. T-shirts look expensive. The little collisions started innocently. He'd brush past me in the narrow corridor outside the bathroom, palm grazing the small of my back for half a second. Sorry, bro. And I'd go rigid. Pretending to check my phone, he'd stretch in the living room while I tried to read. Shirt riding up just enough to reveal the cut line of his hip bones. Sunlight striping across skin like it had been paid to pose. He'd lean over the back of the couch while I sketched. Chin nearly on my shoulder, breath warm with peppermint gum. Still drawing those moody cityscapes? I'd grunt. He'd linger. None of it meant anything. That's what I told myself every night, staring at the fan blades chopping shadows across the ceiling. Then came Tuesday. I was hunched over my laptop, headphones blasting lo-fi, trying to finish a typography project. The door creaked. Zane filled the frame tank top damp from a late workout. Towel slung around his neck. Didn't know you were busy, he said. But instead of retreating, he propped a hip against my desk, arms folded. You've been hitting the gym, huh? I blinked. Not really. Tilted his head, eyes flicking over me like he was reading subtitles. Could have fooled me. Then he was gone, leaving only the faint scent of cedar deodorant and the ghost of his gaze. I didn't save a single file that night. Wednesday morning, he was already in the kitchen, leaning against the counter in low-slung track pants, spooning yogurt straight from the tub. Sleep okay? Fine, I lied, avoiding the way sleep had rumpled his curls into soft commas. He yawned, stretched spine popping, ribs flaring, and I stared too long at the play of muscle under skin. Weird dream, he said around a grin. You were in it. My mug slipped. Tea sloshed over the rim. What? Relax, man. Can't even remember the plot. He licked yogurt off his thumb, eyes laughing. Why's your face red? From that moment, the house shrank. Not the physical square footage, still the same cracked tiles. Same flickering tube light, but the air thickened. Every doorway felt narrower. Every silence carried weight. Thursday, he invaded my room under the pretense of the guest room bulb fused. Mind if I chill here? Your signal's stronger. He didn't wait for an answer. Dropped onto my bed like a cat claiming sun, kicked off his slides, scrolled TikTok with the volume criminally high. I sat at my desk pretending to work while the mattress dipped under his weight, while his bare foot accidentally nudged my ankle under the table and stayed there. Friday, his hoodie migrated to my chair. Saturday, his charger colonized my power strip. By Sunday, his toothbrush stood sentinel beside mine in the cloudy plastic cup. Bristles touching like they were gossiping, I kept waiting for the irritation to pick, waiting to snap. To demand my space back, it never came. What came instead was a low, constant hum under my skin. Sunday evening, I was flat on my bed, graphic tablet forgotten in my lap, staring at a half-finished poster that looked like a cry for help. Zane sat on the floor, back against the footboard, controller in hand, swearing softly at whatever game he was losing. At some point he shifted. His shoulder blade brushed my knee. Neither of us moved. The room smelled like chai and his coconut, shampoo, and the faint static of the console. On screen, his character died spectacularly. He tossed the controller aside, flopped backward so his head landed on the mattress beside my thigh. Movie night? He asked the ceiling. Your pick. But nothing with subtitles, I beg. I like subtitles, I muttered. He turned his head. Curls tickled my wrist. Of course you do, Artie boy. I queued up a quiet Japanese film about lonely astronauts. He didn't complain. Halfway through, he migrated upward, stretching out beside me, close enough that our shoulders touched whenever either of us breathed. On screen, 2 astronauts floated in silence. In the room, the only light came from the laptop and the street lamp, bleeding orange through the curtains. His pinky brushed mine on the blanket. Accidental, probably. Monday. Ston found me awake before the azan, padding to the kitchen in socks. Zane was already there, hoodie unzipped, hair sticking up like he'd lost a fight with the pillow. Up early for once, he rasped. Couldn't sleep. He reached past me for the sugar tin. The sleeve of his hoodie grazed my forearm. Static sparked. You take it black now? He asked, nodding at my mug, trying to cut the sweetness. Smirked. Everything's sweeter with you around, Hassan. I choked on air. He laughed, low and morning rough, and stole my mug to take a sip. Still bitter. Some things don't change. That afternoon, he barged in with a laptop and a family-sized pack of Lay's. Movie night, round 2. But I'm picking. He chose an old Bollywood rom-com, 3 hours of misunderstandings and rain songs. 20 minutes in, he sprawled across the foot of the bed, head on my pillow. Feet dangling off the edge. Halfway through, his foot found my ankle again. This time, he hooked it there, casual as a seatbelt. I didn't move. Neither did he. Tuesday, he left his gym towel on my chair. Wednesday, his earbuds tangled with my pens. Thursday, I found his sketchbook, yes. He drew 2 open on my desk. Half-finished charcoal portrait of a jawline that looked suspiciously familiar. Friday morning, Mom called from the veranda. Zane's campus reopens tomorrow. He'll head back after lunch. The relief I expected. Didn't arrive? What? Arrived was a hollow ache behind my ribs. That night, he tactfully knocked before pushing the door open with his shoulder. Last sleepover, Rumi, he said. Softer than usual, he carried 2 mugs of Dude Patty and set one on my nightstand like it belonged there. We drank in silence. The chai was too sweet. He'd added 3 spoons. When the mugs were empty, he didn't leave. Instead, he towed off his slides, climbed onto the bed fully clothed, and lay on top of the blanket beside me. Moonlight striped the room, through the half-open blinds. Neither of us spoke. His breathing evened out first. Mine took longer. Saturday morning. I woke to an empty bed and the faint smell of his cologne on my pillow. Downstairs, his duffel waited by the door, zipped and obedient. He was in the kitchen, leaning against the counter exactly where he'd been that first morning, only now his eyes were on me. Bus leaves in 20, he said. I nodded. He pushed off the counter. Closed the distance in 2 strides. For a second I thought he'd hug me family. Goodbye, C-U-at-Eid. Instead, he stopped just short. Close enough that I could see the faint scar through his left eyebrow, the one he got falling off a bike at 12. Thanks for the week, he said quietly. Didn't suck as much as I thought. I swallowed. Same. He grinned, but it didn't reach his eyes. Don't let the quiet get too loud without me. Then he was going nix, thudding down the porch steps, duffel slung over one shoulder. The screen door banging shut behind him, the house exhaled. My room looked bigger, cleaner. Wrong, that. Right. I opened my laptop to work and found a new file on the desktop. Zane_doodle.mp4. Clicked. It was a 30-second clip phone footage, shaky. Me, asleep on my side, mouth slightly open, afternoon light striping my face. The camera lingered on the curve of my shoulder. The way my lashes cast shadows on my cheeks, his voice, barely a whisper off screen. Look at this nerd. Doesn't even know. The clip ended. I stared at the frozen frame for a long time. Then I opened our family group chat and typed, *, tell Zane the Wi-Fi in my room still sucks. He should come fix it next weekend. *. I deleted it. Reteed. Sent 3. I deleted it. RETYPED. Sent 3 dots appeared almost instantly. Zane, on my way. The air conditioning in the flat rattled like an old man clearing his throat. It was the only sound when the movie ended. The screen went black, but the room stayed lit by the blue glow of the standby light on the television. Zara pulled the throw blanket higher over her knees, suddenly aware of how close Liam's arm was to hers on the shared armrest of the couch. That was weirdly good, he said, voice low, almost surprised. Yeah, she answered, the word barely audible. He turned his head. You always this quiet after a film? Only when the film does all the talking for me. He laughed under his breath. Fair. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was full, like a held breath. Liam stretched, the movement bringing his shoulder against hers for a second, before he settled back. He didn't move away. Neither did she. I'm crashing here tonight, he said, casual eyes on the ceiling. Zara's pulse flickered. Guest room's got better Wi-Fi. Guest room's cold, he said. And the mattress smells like mothballs and regret. She smiled despite herself. Fine, but you're on the left. I drool on the right. Noted. She lay awake long after his breathing evened out. The fan above them spun lazy circles, pushing warm air around the room. Liam slept on his back, one arm flung above his head, the other resting inches from her hip. She watched the rise and fall of his chest and wondered when the space between them started feeling negotiable. Morning came in slow, golden slices through the half-open blinds. Zara woke to the smell of coffee and the soft clatter of a spoon against ceramic. Liam was already up, barefoot in her kitchen, wearing yesterday's t-shirt and a pair of her brother's old track pants that hung low on his hips. You own a French press? He asked without turning. Bottom cupboard left of the sink. Found it, filled it, pressed the plunger with the same careful focus he used to give penalty kicks back in school. When he handed her a mug, their fingers brushed. Neither flinched. They drank in silence on the balcony, Karachi traffic humming 12 floors below. The sea was a dull silver line in the distance. Liam leaned on the railing, elbows locked, staring out like he was reading something in the smog. You ever think we got stuck? He asked suddenly. Stuck? Like versions of ourselves froze at 16. Everyone else moved on, but we're still circling the same drain. Zara sipped her coffee. It was too hot, burnt her tongue. Speak for yourself. I upgraded to 17 last year, he snorted. Hilarious. She watched him. The easy grin was there, but his eyes were tired. You okay? He shrugged. Just loud in my head sometimes. She nodded like she understood. Maybe she did. The days folded into each other. Liam's duffel bag migrated from the guest room to the foot of Zara's bed without discussion. He left his toothbrush in the cup beside hers. She found his hoodie draped over her desk chair and didn't move it. They cooked together badly. He burned the rice, She oversalted the doll. They ate cross-legged on the living room rug, plates balanced on their knees, arguing over whose turn it was to do the dishes. At night, the couch stayed empty. The bed became neutral territory. They slept back to back at first, a careful 6 inches of mattress between them. Then one morning she woke to find his arm heavy across her waist, his breath warm against the nape of her neck. She didn't move. He didn't either. Thursday evening, power cut out, just as the credits rolled on some mindless action flick they'd picked to drown out the heat. The fan died with a sigh. The room plunged into sticky darkness. Great Zara muttered. Liam's phone, flashlight clicked on, casting long shadows. Emergency protocol. Balcony, cold drinks, 0 adulting. They carried 2 bottles of Mirinda onto the narrow strip of concrete outside her bedroom window. The city flickered below, half the buildings dark, the other half glowing like stubborn fireflies. A dog barked somewhere far away. The call to prayer drifted up, thin and metallic from a distant loudspeaker. Liam sat with his back against the wall, legs stretched out. Zara sat opposite, knees drawn up, bottle sweating in her hand. The silence stretched, comfortable until it wasn't. "You've changed," he said, quietly. She looked up. "Since school? Since everything?" He picked at the label on his bottle. "You used to laugh like you were daring the world to shut you up. Now you laugh like you're checking if it's still allowed." Zara's throat tightened. "People grow, yeah. But into what?" She didn't answer. Couldn't the question sat between them like a third person? After a minute, he spoke again. "Why do you let me stay?" She blinked. "What?" "The Wi-Fi excuse is bullshit, and we both know it. Guest room's fine, so why?" Zara stared at the city lights. Somewhere a generator kicked on, humming to life. "Because when you're here, the flat doesn't echo." He was quiet so long she thought he hadn't heard. Then, same. She turned. He was watching her, expression unreadable in the half-dark. "I get tired, Zar. The performing, the loud. The version of me everyone wants on stage. Here, it's just..." He gestured vaguely. "Quiet, real." She swallowed. "You think I'm real?" "I know you are. Even when you're pretending not to be." Her heart knocked hard against her ribs. "And if I stop pretending?" He smiled, small and crooked. "Then maybe we admit we're already in too deep to climb out." The words hung there, fragile and alive. Neither moved to break them. Later, when the power returned and the fan whirred back to life, they lay on top of the covers, too warm for blankets. The space between them had shrunk to nothing. Liam's fingers found hers in the dark, tentative. She laced them together without thinking. His thumb traced the inside of her wrist, slow, like he was reading Braille. "You drool on the right," he murmured. "Sleepy, liar, you snore. Occupational hazard of perfection." She laughed quietly into the pillow. He squeezed her hand once, then let go. But he didn't roll away. The next morning, Zara woke to sunlight and the smell of parathos. Liam stood at the stove, flipping one with more confidence than skill. Oil popped and hissed. He wore her mother's old kiss, the cook apron tied too tight around his waist. "Breakfast of champions," he announced, sliding a plate across the counter. She took it, leaning against the fridge. "You planning to stay forever?" He paused. Spatula midair. "Wasn't planning anything. Just happened." Zara bit into the paratha. It was burnt on one edge, perfect on the other. "Good," she said. "Plans are overrated." He grinned. The same grin from when they were 10 and he dared her to jump off the school roof into the swimming pool. She'd done it. He'd followed. They'd both gotten detention. Worth it. Weeks slipped by. The duffel bag never went back to the guest room. Liam's shoes lined up beside hers by the door. He learned where she kept the spare bulbs, the emergency candles, the good tea. She learned he took his coffee with 2 sugars and no milk. That he hummed old Atif Aslam songs when he thought no one was listening. That he flinched at sudden loud noises, but pretended he'd not one night. The rain came down in sheets, drumming hard against the windows. Power out again. They sat on the floor of her room, backs against the bed, a single candle flickering between them. Liam was telling a story about the time he'd accidentally locked his coach out of the locker room in nothing but a towel. His impressions were terrible. Zara laughed until her stomach hurt, forehead pressed to her knees. When the laughter faded, he was quiet. She looked up. He was watching her, candlelight dancing in his eyes. "What?" she asked. "Nothing. Just, you should laugh like that more." "I do. When you're around." His breath caught, almost imperceptible. Then he reached out, slow enough that she could have stopped him. She didn't. His fingers brushed a strand of hair from her face, tucked it behind her ear. His hand lingered. "Zara," he said, voice rough. "Yeah. I'm not performing right now, I know." He leaned in. She met him halfway. The kiss was soft, careful, like testing thin ice. When they pulled apart, foreheads still touching, he whispered, "Still real?" "Realer than taxes," she said. He laughed against her mouth and kissed her again. Much later, when the candle had burned low and the rain had softened to a hush, they lay tangled in the sheets. The fan spun above them, lazy and familiar. Liam's fingers traced idle patterns on her shoulder. "Still crashing here tonight?" she asked, teasing. He pressed a kiss to her collarbone. "Think I'm upgraded to permanent resident?" She smiled into the dark. "Good." The guest room was getting lonely. Outside, the city kept moving horns, generators, stray cats fighting over garbage. Inside, the room was quiet except for their breathing, steady and matched. The space between them had disappeared entirely, replaced by something warmer, heavier, undeniable. Zara closed her eyes. The weight under her ribs wasn't pressure anymore. It was ballast. Something to keep her from floating away. The house was too quiet for a Saturday night, the kind of quiet that makes your own pulse feel loud. I was sprawled across the couch in the living room, legs draped over the armrest, scrolling through nothing on my phone, while the TV flickered some forgotten cooking show in the background. The air smelled faintly of the pizza we'd demolished. Earlier grease and oregano lingering like a confession. Zane had been crashing here for 3 days now. Officially, it was because his apartment's Wi-Fi was down and he had a deadline. Unofficially, we'd both stopped pretending that was the whole story somewhere around the second night. When he'd lingered in the kitchen doorway long after the dishes were done, watching me rinse a glass like it was the most fascinating thing he'd ever seen. "You're different now," he'd said last night. Voice low, the lamp on my desk carving soft shadows across his face. In a good way, hadn't known what to say. So I'd reached for the bag of chips on the nightstand, crunching loudly to fill the space between us. But he didn't laugh. He just watched, patient, like he was waiting for something I wasn't ready to give. "Why do you really want to sleep in here?" I'd asked finally, brushing salt from my fingers. He'd blinked. "What do you mean? The Wi-Fi excuse?" The guest room's literally 10 feet from the router. He'd looked away then, fingers picking at the frayed edge of my blanket. "I don't know, it just feels better here. Quieter. Less noise in my head." That stopped me. I studied him the way his shoulders curled in slightly, like he was bracing for impact. Zane, who could charm a room full of strangers in under 5 minutes, who never met a silence he couldn't fill with a joke or a story. Vulnerable wasn't a word I'd ever associated with him. "Do you ever feel like you're always performing?" he asked, so quietly I almost missed it. "Like people expect this version of you, and if you slip even a little—" "Yeah," I said before he could finish. "All the time." He nodded, slow, like I just handed him something fragile. "I don't feel weird around you, not even when it's quiet." Pause. "Even when you look at me like that." "Like what?" "Like you're trying to figure me out." "Maybe I am." His voice dropped. "And if you do—" I didn't answer right away. The truth was, I didn't know. So I gave him the only truth I had. "Then maybe we stop pretending we don't already feel something." The words hung there, soft and dangerous. He looked at me for a long moment, eyes unreadable, then reached out. His knuckles brushed the back of my hand, just that. Nothing more. But it was enough to make the air feel suddenly thin. We stayed like that, barely touching, until he leaned back against the headboard and closed his eyes. I'm tired, he murmured. Then sleep here. I said. He did, facing away from me, breathing steady. While I stared at the ceiling and counted heartbeats instead of sheep, the next day he said he'd be out late. Jim, then maybe Tyler's. Don't wait up. He'd flashed that easy grin, the one that made people forgive him anything, and disappeared in a swirl of hoodie and cologne. I locked the door, or thought I did. The house was mine for the first time in days. No music leaking from his headphones. No off-key humming from the shower. No footsteps pacing the hallway like he couldn't decide whether to knock. Just silence, thick and golden. I changed into an old t-shirt and shorts, the kind with holes in the hem that I only wore when no one was looking. Dimmed the lights. Sank into bed with my phone and a playlist of songs I hadn't listened to since college. For once, I wasn't waiting. I was just... Hear then the jingle of keys. I froze. The handle turned. The door opened. Zane stood in the doorway, gym bag slung over one shoulder, hair damp with sweat. His eyes went wide. Neither of us moved. You said you weren't coming back, I said, voice cracking as I yanked the blanket up to my chin. The gym closed early. Tyler bailed. He swallowed. I texted you. Hadn't checked my phone in hours. He stepped back, hands still on the knob. I'm sorry. His gaze flicked to me, then away, then back again, like he couldn't decide where to look. I didn't think the door started to close, but then it stopped. He pushed it open again, slower this time. I should have knocked. It's fine, I lied. Just don't make it weird. He gave a shaky laugh. Too late. He lingered in the doorway, then crossed the room in 3 careful steps and stopped at the edge of the bed. I could smell the faint trace of his deodorant, the warmth radiating off his skin. I didn't mean to. He ran a hand through his hair, leaving it messier than before. It's just, you looked peaceful. Peaceful, I echoed. Before you saw me, he said, like you weren't holding anything back. I didn't know what to say to that. He sat down on the edge of the mattress, was careful, like he was afraid it might collapse under the weight of everything unsaid. I keep thinking about last night, he said quietly. What you said. About stopping pretending. I pulled the blanket tighter. Zane, I'm not asking you to say anything, he said quickly. I don't want to be the guy who walks in and ruins the first quiet you've had in days. But I also don't want to keep sleeping in the guest room like nothing's changed. The room felt too small suddenly. The air too warm. I don't know what this is, I admitted. He looked at me, then really looked. And for the first time, I saw the exhaustion behind his eyes. Not just from the gym. From carrying whatever version of himself he thought the world wanted. But I know I don't want to pretend anymore. Not with you. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Then don't. He nodded, slow, like he was testing the weight of the words. Then he kicked off his shoes and lay down on top of the blanket, fully clothed, hands folded over his stomach, facing the ceiling, not touching me, not leaving. The silence stretched, but it wasn't heavy anymore. It was just there. After a while, his voice came soft in the dark. You still counting heartbeats? Yeah, I whispered. Mind if I join? I turned my head. His eyes were closed, but the corner of his mouth lifted just a little. Go ahead, I said. So we lay there, 2 people learning how to be still in the same space. Not performing, not pretending, just breathing. And for the first time in days, the quiet didn't feel like something we had to fill. It felt like something we were finally allowed to share. The house was too quiet for a Saturday, kind of quiet that presses in from the walls and makes every small sound feel like a confession. I was in the spare room that had become mine over the summer, the one with the slanted ceiling and the window that stuck when it rained. Sunlight came through in dusty bars, catching on the half-packed duffel on the floor. I'd been folding the same t-shirt for 10 minutes, smoothing the cotton like it might smooth everything else. The door was open a crack. I hadn't heard Jamie come up the stairs. He moved like someone used to not being noticed. When I glanced up, he was leaning in the frame, arms crossed, watching me with that half smile he wore when he wasn't sure what to say. His hair was still damp from the shower, curling at the ends, and he smelled like the cedar soap he'd stolen from my bathroom weeks ago. "You always fold like you're defusing a bomb," he said. I snorted. "Some of us respect fabric." Stepped inside, careful, like the floor might give him away. The room was small. 3 strides, and he was close enough that I could see the faint freckles across his nose, the ones he hated. He didn't sit. Just stood there, hands in the pockets of his jeans, looking at the duffel instead of me. "You're really leaving tomorrow," he said. Not a question. "Flight's at 7. I kept my voice light. "Gotta get back before the semester starts." Jamie nodded, slow. He'd known the plan for months. We both had. He was crashing here while his apartment got fumigated. I was subletting through August. Temporary, clean lines. No mess, except the lines had started blurring somewhere between late-night tacos, and the time he fell asleep on my couch with his head in my lap. Breathing steady while I pretended to watch the movie. He rubbed the back of his neck. "I could drive you to the airport. You'd hate driving in the city." I'd manage. I set the t-shirt down. The room felt smaller suddenly, the air thick with cedar and the faint hum of the fridge downstairs. Jamie's eyes flicked to mine, then away. He had a way of doing that, looking like he wanted to say something important, and swallowing it. "I'm gonna miss this," he said finally. "The house. The quiet. You burning toast at 2 a.m.? Laughed, but it came out shaky. "You can burn your own toast when I'm gone." He didn't laugh back. Just took one more step, close enough that I had to tilt my head to meet his eyes. They were darker than usual, the green flecked with gold in the light. I'd memorized that without meaning to. "Eli," he said, soft. My name in his mouth always sounded careful, like he was testing it. I waited. The silence stretched, not uncomfortable, but full. The way it gets when 2 people have said everything except the one thing that matters. He reached out, slow, and brushed a knuckle along my jaw. The touch was barely there, but it lit me up like a struck match. I didn't move, didn't breathe. "I don't want you to go," he said. My heart slammed against my ribs. "It's just a semester." "I know." His thumb lingered near my cheekbone. "But it's not about this semester." The air shifted, charged. I could feel the heat of him, the faint tremor in his hand. We'd danced around this for weeks, shoulders brushing in doorways, knees knocking under the kitchen table, the way he'd look at me when he thought I wasn't watching. But never this close. Never this honest, I swallowed. "Jamie, I'm not good at this," he cut in, voice rough, saying stuff. "But I've been thinking about it since the night you let me win at Mario Kart." "You didn't win." "I let you." He smiled, small and real. "Exactly." His hand slid to the back of my neck, tentative. I leaned into it without thinking. Our foreheads touched. The world narrowed to the space between breaths, the faint scratch of his stubble. The way his pulse jumped under my fingertips when I rested them against his throat. "I don't know what happens when you leave," he whispered. "But I know I don't want to find out without trying." I closed my eyes. The duffel sat open behind me, half-packed, a reminder of the life waiting on the other side of tomorrow. But right now, none of it felt urgent. "I'm scared," I admitted. "Me too." Was all it took. I kissed him slow, careful, like we had all the time in the world. His mouth was warm, tasting faintly of coffee and the mint gum he chewed when he was nervous. He made a small sound, surprised, then kissed me back like he'd been waiting years. We didn't rush. There was no frantic tumble, no tearing at clothes. Just the quiet unraveling of something we'd both been carrying too long. His hands mapped my shoulders, my back, like he was learning the shape of me. I traced the line of his spine through his t-shirt, felt him shiver. When we pulled apart, foreheads still touching, he laughed under his breath. "That was yeah," I finished. He rested his head against my shoulder, arms loose around my waist. I could feel his heart racing, matching mine. The room smelled like cedar and sunlight and the faint trace of his shampoo. Later, we ended up on the bed, fully clothed, just lying there. The ceiling fan spun lazy circles above us. Jamie's fingers traced idle patterns on my arm. "I should have said something sooner," he murmured. "You're saying it now?" He huffed a laugh. Barely. I turned to face him. His eyes were soft, unguarded. What happens when I'm 3 states away? We figure it out. He said it like it was simple. Maybe it could be night came slow. We ordered pizza, ate it cross-legged on the living room floor because the couch felt too far away. He stole my crusts. I let him. When the credits rolled on some forgettable action movie, he was asleep against my shoulder. One hand fisted in my shirt like he was afraid I'd vanish. I carried him to bed awkward, laughing under my breath when he mumbled protests. He curled into me without waking, breath warm against my neck. I lay there in the dark, listening to the house settle, the distant hum of crickets outside. My flight ticket was in the kitchen drawer. I could still make it, but I didn't move. Morning came gold and quiet. Jamie stirred first, blinking up at me like he wasn't sure I was real. Then he smiled, sleepy and slow, and pressed a kiss to my collarbone. "Morning," he said, voice gravel rough. "Morning." I brushed his hair back. "Still freaking out?" He considered. "A little bit, you." "Terrified." Propped himself on an elbow, tracing the line of my jaw. "Good terrified or bad terrified? The kind where I cancel my flight?" His eyes widened. "You'd do that?" "I already did." I'd texted the airline at 3 a.m., fingers shaking. Changed it to December. Jamie stared at me for a long beat, then laughed bright, startled. The sound I'd fallen for, somewhere between burnt toast and stolen blankets. He kissed me hard, rolling us until I was laughing into his mouth. The day stretched lazy. We made pancakes and argued over blueberries. He burned the first batch. I ate them anyway. Sunlight pooled on the kitchen floor while we washed dishes side by side, hips bumping, quiet smiles. Afternoon found us on the porch, legs tangled on the old swing. The neighborhood was still, just the rustle of leaves and the occasional car. Jamie's head rested on my shoulder. "What do we tell people?" He asked. "That we're figuring it out." "Out?" He nodded. "I like that." Evening came with thunderstorms. We watched from the window, rain drumming the roof. When the power flickered, he lit candles, cheap ones from the dollar store that smelled like vanilla and fake pine. The glow turned his face soft, shadows dancing across his cheekbones. We didn't sleep much that night. Talked instead about everything and nothing. The way he used to hide in the library in high school. How I once tried to dye my hair blue and ended up green. The fears we carried like extra luggage. When words ran out, we kissed until the candles burned low. Weeks blurred. My duffel stayed half-packed in the corner, a silent agreement. Jamie's apartment was ready, but he never mentioned moving back. We grocery shopped like a couple, argued over cereal brands, left toothbrushes in the same cup. Some nights, doubt crept in. What if distance broke us? What if the world outside this house didn't fit? But then he'd reach for my hand under the table, or fall asleep mid-sentence with his head in my lap. And the fear felt small. One morning in October, I woke to find him at the kitchen table, laptop open, frowning at a calendar. "Spring semester," he said, when I slid a mug of coffee toward him. "You'll be back on campus." I sat across from him. "We'll visit? Weekends? Breaks?" He traced the rim of his mug. "I don't want to be the guy waiting around." "You won't be." I reached for his hand. "We'll both be waiting. Together." He looked up, eyes steady. "You mean that?" Every word. The smile he gave me then was worth every uncertain mile ahead. Years later, people would ask how we knew. I'd think of burnt toast and cedar soap, of a half-packed duffel and a porch swing in the rain, of the night we chose each other without promises. It's just the quiet certainty that some things are worth the risk. We never did label it. Didn't need to. The house stopped feeling temporary. The quiet stopped feeling empty. And every morning when Jamie smiled at me across the kitchen table, hair a mess, eyes soft with sleep, I knew we'd made the right choice. The road ahead was still uncertain, but we were walking it together, one careful, perfect step at a time.